I do think it's going to evolve again. I think generally speaking, as agentic AI becomes more autonomous, I think the role of the human in the loop changes, and it's going to continue to evolve as we get better at this type of, and I don't just mean you and me, I mean the
Yeah.
world, as we get better at harnessing these types of AI solutions from that aspect.
We are going to have another episode of AI Got This. And today it's going to be a little bit of a different format. We usually have two guests on, and today it's going to be Gina and I having a conversation. I think there's some relevant topics here around some stuff that is happening with AI and how we can protect ourselves from sending out information that maybe is not true. So, Gina, why don't you remind everybody who you are?
Sure. I'm Gina Montgomery. I'm the Director of AI Automation and Analytics here at Armanino, working with Carmel very closely with our clients on all sorts of fun AI solutions, and happy to be back.
Yeah, happy to have you back. So there have been a few things in the news lately where AI sounds really confident, and people aren't necessarily checking the work, and they're sending out information that isn't 100% accurate. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there was a pretty large company recently in the news around an AI scandal, we'll call it, where they had produced a report that the AI generated some hallucinated academic references, right? So the sources were made up, and no one verified that, and then it was uncovered, and it caused a pretty big reputational sting, to the company. And I think that's really what this is about. Is when we're thinking about AI in our business and changing our models and doing whatever we can to speed up, speed without accountability can lead to reputational risk.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that we try and share with folks too on a regular basis is that, and we say this in a couple of different ways. AI is your thought partner, you are the thought leader. And we also say, trust but verify or validate, right? So it's not a replacement for thinking. And so it's super important for us to recognize that and make sure that we are still involved in that sort of area of how we utilize AI. So maybe you could talk about a little bit about how to help uh, folks keep AI and the people who are using AI accountable for the outcomes that we're seeing.
Yeah, I would say we really focus on designing accountable AI experiences that keep humans in the loop, and I think that's the key part of it. I often hear, end users say things like, "Well, how do I know if the AI is hallucinating or not?" And for me, it's not so much as a hallucination issue, it's more of an accountability issue, because the AI is trained to sound sure of itself, so it doesn't really know if it's right or wrong, right? Like, it's just making its best predictions based upon whatever context it's given. And so that, to me, is not necessarily a hallucination issue. It's not having that human in the loop. So in my opinion, if we have any critical things that could impact reputation or who we are or what we're delivering, in the business, I think that has to have some sort of human in the loop from that aspect. So we've put together a framework that we follow called CARE, and I'd be happy to talk a little bit about that if you'd like.
Of course, I'd like you to. I mean, I think that's what this is all about, right? I mean, I think what we don't want is situations like this to scare people off from in terms of adoption or utilizing AI. What we do want is to educate folks and make sure that they know that there's a way to do this that is responsible. So let's hear about the CARE framework.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, in my opinion, we have four key pillars to creating something around responsible deployment, something that's practical. So, C in CARE stands for context. So, helping to define purpose, boundaries, and what specific data sources that you want the AI to interact with. That way, you can prevent it from working outside of its scope. For example, maybe you want it to look at whatever policy documents you have in the org. So whatever questions come in, you want it to answer questions about those policies, and you don't want it searching the World Wide Web, right? That's just a real basic, keep it focused on a specific set of information. It knows its purpose. I'm here to answer policy questions. I'm not allowed to go outside to the World Wide Web, I have to take a look at the sources that were given to me. So that's really what C in context is all about. A is for awareness. So how do we design the AI system to make sure that it's showing sources and confidence levels? So you make the reasoning it's doing visible to the end users. So you can give it some of the boundaries, and like if you're unsure, to the AI, if the AI is unsure, say so, right? Speak up. If you can't cite the source and I can't look at the source and validate the source, then it doesn't belong here, and I should think that your confidence is low. So just kind of creating that awareness or that ability for the users to see where those things are coming from. And then
I love that you're using AI to build that awareness, right? Like, I think this is the other piece that people forget about is you can use AI to help you with this validation. Love
sure
that.
can.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. So we got context, we have an awareness. Now we're going to R, which is relationship. And this one is new, and it's new for people to wrap their minds around. I've been thinking a lot about organizational leadership, right? And how we as leaders have been trained to motivate our employees, right? People are generally motivated by rewards and, good positive vibes and things like that, where an AI digital worker is not, right? They just do it, it just does its job. So when you think about how do I clarify what the AI handles and how do I clarify what the humans validate? So embedding like human review checkpoints as an example into your solution, that's where that R relationship comes from, is the relationship between the humans and the AIs working together to get the job done. It is a new concept.
Yeah.
and then E is all about empathy, which I think is something that we really do need to hold on to. We got to think about our AI solutions in design so that they're designed for tone, fairness, and human impact. So even when the AI is right, empathy makes it trustworthy, right? So like sometimes that just is, how do you want the AI to sound? Like how do you want it to recognize bias, make sure it's not using any sort of bias that could be built into the model itself. And then what is the impact it could have if things go wrong, right? Like in that example we talked about with the large company who, didn't realize there were made up sources in their report. That was a reputational risk. So what happens if this AI system, because typically speaking, if you build an agentic AI, it's there to do a task for you. What happens when that task goes wrong? Does it impact your reputation? Could it cost you money down the line? Things like that. So that's really what that care framework's all about.
I think that's really smart. And I like the way that we're incorporating the relationship and the empathy there. So it still sounds like it's fairly confident though. So from an end user perspective, what do I need to know about this when, even if I'm incorporating the care piece of this, like how am I looking at this going, all right, where do I need to focus? You talked about the human in the loop and building the process so that the human is in the loop. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the user experience conversation really comes into play with this. So instead of all these experiments that we've been doing, and by we, I mean the world, generally speaking, right? We've been like, oh, cool, AI, I'm going to experiment on 100 million different things across different parts of my business, and none of it's connected, and I don't know how to govern it. I don't even know what the purpose of some of them are. So it's, some experiments are half done, some are a quarter. So we got to get out of that and start thinking about really truly what is that user experience for AI? And that starts with defining some of those things up front. What is the purpose of it, right? What is it supposed to do? Write that down, right? What boundaries should I give it? What context or sources am I going to allow it to interact with? And then I start to think about how will I verify whatever its task is that it's doing, what pieces of that need a human intervention, right? So that we go, whoop, I better spot check that. Or do I look at the source? Or is it a decision point, right? Do I want the AI making all the decisions? Or does the human in the loop have that? So sort of defining that relationship piece. What is the AI's role in this? Where does the human come in from a verification perspective? And then again, on the empathy side, we talked a little bit about what happens when things don't go right. So if you haven't defined all that, right, what is the total experience for the AI, its purpose, boundaries, what it's allowed to do, what your role is as a human or other people on your team versus that, and then what happens when things go awry? Like, I think that just has to become more common and less of an afterthought in getting out of that experimental mindset that we've been in.
Yeah, and I think incorporating all of those things into as you identify use cases, that becomes the area where I think we've, you know, as an AI practice, haven't focused on that as much as use case identification. I think what you're saying is the tide is turning, and we need to be super cognizant and start including these types of things in those use case identification and designs so that everybody's aware of the possibilities and how to then mitigate those risks, because certainly risk is still one of the main things that people are worried about with AI, right? Like, okay, I mean, we're on calls all the time where they talk about, well, what's the risk?
Mhm.
So okay, super interesting. And what about, like, when you think about, do you think this is going to evolve again? Like, so we've got the care piece now. What's the next thing that comes after this?
Yeah, I do think it's going to evolve again. I think generally speaking, as agentic AI becomes more autonomous, I think the role of the human in the loop changes, and it's going to continue to evolve as we get better at this type of, and I don't just mean you and me, I mean the
Yeah.
world, as we get better at harnessing these types of AI solutions from that aspect. I did have an example in the wild, right? So I was chatting with one of our manufacturing clients. They were talking about how there's someone that works on one of their lines, the production lines, that's been there 25, 30 years, right? There's no manual that's been written that knows how he knows how to do that job, right? And he's at risk for retirement soon. So they were talking about tribal knowledge becoming like super important for them to somehow make available for new hires. So typically when they bring someone onto that line, because that process is sort of complicated, it takes a good 6 weeks for them to be able to run it independently. So they were thinking about how do I reduce that time down? So when they were defining the role of it, right? So like how can I capture the tribal knowledge? How can the AI be designed to produce results based upon just that, not like the World Wide Web and other inferments that it's making, but also what would be the empathy part? So instead of it being a negative, it was that people felt less anxiety and then their readiness increased. So because we were able to design it that way and capture it the way they wanted, and the source was now out from between somebody's two ears and into a data source of some kind, that from an empathy perspective just meant less anxiety and faster readiness times. So I think it's going to continue to evolve from that aspect too, because right now it's like everyone is really wowed by time savings, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like as we get more sophisticated and things become more autonomous and complex workflows are being handled, more and more by the AI and less by the human in the loop, I think this continues to evolve.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think that's a really great example, right, where you can utilize AI, and if you're a new person on a job, feeling comfortable to ask the AI those questions, because the AI is not judging how many times you ask that question, right? But the person may be like, "I said that to you yesterday. I don't understand why you're not, why you can't remember that." It's tough though. That's a lot. We have a lot of information coming at us at all at once. And so I think that that's a really nice way to think about that. Okay, so I have one other question for you, and then we can sort of wrap this up. But as we think about, um, we've been talking about this for a long time because we've got a lot of citizen development that is happening in the wild, as you like to say, right? I compare it to, we're sort of in an access database land where everybody's building them, and how do we start to think about, and knowing that you've got this care methodology and how we're starting to think about incorporating all of that, how do we do that and still allow some citizen development but bring that into that arena?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that in terms of when we roll out AI, it's easy to think it's a technology decision, right? And we talk about that a lot when we're talking to clients, and it's really more of a people component, right? So the technology is almost the same no matter which LLM you choose or whatever work productivity tool suite that you have in your back office or whatever that is. It's pretty similar, but the people that need to shift their mindset and learn, this is where that comes into play. So once they learn how to write good prompts or take those and turn them into basic agents, using tools like Copilot Studio or Gemini or whatever the easy to use button is, they need to have a training and understanding of what accountable AI means, right? So I would suggest that people start thinking about the people side as much as the technology side. For example, with Microsoft, they have an ability within M365 that you can see every agent that's been built by your people that are under your organization, right? So you could certainly apply some governance policies to agents through Microsoft's technology platform. But at the end of the day, does that serve this accountability component that we're talking about? Probably not. That's not a technology discussion. That's a end user enablement perspective. So maybe you need to have them go through a training and acknowledge that they understand the framework that they're supposed to follow. And maybe there's some sort of audit that needs to be set up in the business where people that aren't citizen developers, maybe there's a small AI committee, they're reviewing, the types of agents that these citizen developers are creating. Do they fit the framework? Maybe AI can help with that. How do we validate, the agent in comparison to this framework? So I could go on, but that would be my 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think we're seeing a lot of folks start really wondering, okay, if we've got citizen development, and I think there's a top-down, bottom-up thing that's happening right now with agents and everybody having access, and we want the creativity from the bottom up, but we also want to have some level of, I don't know if I want to call it control, but maybe it's oversight around, like, okay, if this agent or whatever you built is going to be used broader than maybe you and the 3 people that you sit around and you guys are kind of doing the same function, but now it becomes this could be a corporate wide useful tool. Who manages it going forward? Did they take into account the care methodology? What happens if something goes right? And so I think those are also the next evolving things that we're going to start talking about and seeing as super important as we continue to roll out and see new AI solutions that people are using. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Very cool. Well, I love the care methodology. I think that's a great framework, and glad to see that we're starting to use that. Any final thoughts before we call it?
Just that I think it's everyone's responsibility to make AI more accountable as it grows in the organization. And if you're not thinking about that, it might bite you later, right? And that's really what we need to start putting forward, because up until now, like I said, it's been very experimental. Try, not really baking things out fully. I do believe the onus is on us as businesses to make sure we're thinking about that, because authority without accountability is risk. So how much authority do you turn over to the AI without thinking through that?
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll see you all next time on AI Got This.
Thanks, Carmel.